The following is a Fourth Hand production.
Well, I don't do very well at a lot of stuff. I like to say that it's kind of like I'm barely treading water. Most of the days I'm barely treading water, right? I'm just kind of dealing with all the shit in my head, whether it be my own ego, whether it be my own made-up fears about shit, all that stuff. Like, I'm barely treading water. And the good thing is I was calmed down when I was told that just be aware of where your arm is, but don't worry about it. But the thing is, that's the same fucking thing. Because if I'm aware, I'm worrying about it, right? And that kind of segues into, I guess, what this is going to be, because I don't have any fucking idea. But, I want to introduce a friend of mine, a dear friend of mine, who always talks with me about a lot of this stuff, about being upset, about being sad, about how do we deal with that stuff. And one thing he always said to me that is a useful thing to say is, quote, the daily business of life. He said to me years and years and years ago, I'm not very good at the daily business of life. And I said, I don't know, what do you mean by that? He said, well, I don't know, mail, paying bills, things like that. I don't really get it. And I thought to myself, I don't really get it either. I'm too busy being upset. And then people send these packages or they send these bills to me and I'm supposed to open them and look at them. And then you have to read all this stuff and this minutia, and then you get to it and you're like, oh, I got to pay this? I'm not going to do that. I don't know what to do with mail. It should be the theme of the show, but it's not. But I'm here with my buddy Marcum, Chris Marcum. And he is one of my dear friends. Hey, buddy. And I wanted to have you on tonight to basically just fucking talk with you about... Sorry, I'm being mindful of my arm there. About how you feel, what you do. And I know that you and I, we talk to each other every day, like on chat.
Right.
And you and I both go through these phases where we're really upset. And it's kind of like our own little small thing, right? It's like... oh, we can have this tunnel thing where I can be upset with you and you could be upset with me, but we do this as a way to get it out so other people can't see it, right?
Right.
Is that fair to say about you at work?
Absolutely fair.
Yeah. So, and we talk about everything from the day's work to where we grew up to baseball.
Well, and I think it's interesting because you're a good 10 years younger than me. You know, I spent some time in the military before I went back to college. And then when we met, you were, 19, and I was almost 29 at the time.
Yeah, I was 19, yeah.
And so it would seem like we were maybe on different paths, but at the same time, I think that we both have the monkey mind, the thing within.
The funk.
The funk. Sometimes people catch funked.
Oh, they catch funk real bad.
And I think that's part of the reason that we became such close friends.
Do you remember what we called? We were at an audition, and we called it the meeting of the minds. When we stood outside, we both learned that we liked Hunter S. Thompson, and we smoked some cigarettes. Sorry, Mom. And we had some cigarettes that I bummed off of you, and we talked about it, and it was for All My Sons.
Sure.
Anyway, and then we went on to like some parties and stuff, and you told me this long story one day on a Friday afternoon about your time in college. And that was when I was first like, this guy is amazing, right? And that was the first time that I saw some like, what do you want to call it? Some truth in a story. Like, people tell an old story like, oh, I was out with my friends and we did this goofy stuff, and they'll kind of cover it up a little bit. Which is not bad. I'm not saying it's bad, but like, you told me this story that was just bare bones. I was drinking every night. I was eating fast food every night.
There was a guy named Paul Paxton. We were working at a pizza place, Gubby's Pizza in Champaign, Illinois.
Champaign, Illinois, yeah.
And our habit, our life
Yeah.
I worked a pizza place. I was the manager and he was the delivery guy.
Mm-hmm.
And every night we would go and get the beer. I would get a 12-pack of Budweiser. He'd get a 12-pack of Keystone for some reason.
Ooh.
I know, right?
Yeah.
And then some fast food, and then some video.
You'd rent a movie.
You'd rent a movie. And it was always like a theme. It was like guys in leather jackets or Vietnam War movie.
Right.
Paul usually picked it. And Paul was like
You just went along with
guy.
Paul.
Yeah, just whatever.
Yeah.
But then that was our thing every single night.
Yeah.
And it was not good. And then we would drink these beers and then just kind of pitch the cans. And so on one side of the oven in the kitchen, the Budweiser cans would start to pile, and then this would start to pile. But we just never really throw them out. They would just continue to pile. And after a while, you just kind of like, oh, well, that's interesting. Oh, how fun. But it wasn't fun.
It was terrible,
it was
right?
sad.
And every night you were like doing that, and you were probably not saying, I'm going to look back on this and be like, man, this is ironic or funny or whatever. You're just like, well, I'm getting a buzz, and I guess this takes me away from whatever it is I'm upset about. Yeah. And
then one day, months into this, I woke up, and I had found myself on the bed that just the sheets were gone. I was just kind of on the mattress of it, and then the windows were just, there wasn't any kind of screen or curtain.
So the sun was just glaring.
And then Paul had these boxes of like Wee and Stag and Hawk and all these. Just like,
what was the first one? Wee?
Wee, like the French word Wee.
Oh, Wee. Like is this like a porno mag?
Like a magazine.
Yeah.
Right? But then there was like Hawk, like these things I'd never heard of, like these weird magazines. Like where would that come from?
Yeah.
And then so I woke up this one day and they were just strewn. So I'm laying on the mattress, and then these magazines are just strewn.
Yeah.
And I was listening to the Jesus Christ Superstar, the old recording with the rock stars, Murray Head and all that.
Yeah.
And it was like an older, like one of those 4 times over sample CD players that kind of like would skip if your CD was kind of bogus. And my eyes opened, and the sun is pouring in, and all I hear is, always thought that I'd be an apostle. Always thought that I'd be an apostle. Just over and over, and I'm just like trying to get my bearings of what is going on here. And that's I
mean, how could you not be friends with him after that? Is the point. And maybe when I heard that, I was just like, oh, that is so authentic and so particular, right? At the same time. But like, so you went to school, and like I said, you're 10 years older than me.
Right.
But you and I have talked a lot about being kids and growing up and having our own weird brains and kind of dealing with the rest of the world. So like growing up, did you get sad when you were a kid? Like, did you get sad? I mean, I guess that's a dumb question. I mean, did you have long periods of sadness?
Isn't it kind of weird, though? Because when you're a kid, you might not know if it's sad or something, maybe just in retrospect. You know, my parents they got together. It was my mom and my stepdad, but they got together when I was an infant.
Little guy.
Right. But for
with
them...
a big beard.
Even then.
Yeah.
But for them, they were in their early 30s, and they had been in some bad relationships, and so when they found each other, it was this great thing, and they were loving it, and they kind of went with that, and it was the late 70s, early 80s, and it wasn't like they were neglectful, outwardly or overtly or overly, but at the same time, they were discovering each other and finding that happiness for themselves. And my dad was in a band, him and his brother and their cousin, they had a band and they would play out.
Do they play gigs on the weekend?
Yeah, sure.
How old are you about this time?
7, 8, 9.
Okay.
And, I'd be at my grandparents a lot and stay over there. And I was left to my own devices a lot of the time. Mm-hmm. But, what do you do? I don't know. I mean, I guess there was a few instances, like where I would be at a basketball practice after school, and Mom was supposed to pick me up at a certain time, and that time came and went, and
Just she wasn't there?
Right. Well, she eventually would show up, but it was much, much later than it was supposed to.
Okay, so she wouldn't pick you up, but would she come to your basketball games?
Oh, no. No. And I played lots of sports and spelling bee, would win the spelling bee, and be on the quiz bowl team and the basketball, and track,
classical,
all these kinds of things, and never attended any of it.
None of it.
None of it. And but then again, that's the weird thing, because at the time, I was like just caught Mario ball that was just like just rolling through space, just kind of just eyes wide open and just like whatever's happening. Okay, this is what's happening right now.
So you weren't necessarily feeling sad.
I wasn't necessarily feeling sad at the time.
Okay. So I was on Scholasticable. We call it Scholasticable because I'm young.
Same thing.
I'm young. And my mom came to fucking Scholasticable meets.
Right.
She came to my choir concerts. Even my dad came to choir concerts. Always complained to it. My butt hurts. On the benches and they came to my shows. They always told me they were proud of me. And so like that had nothing to do with why I was sad. I couldn't figure it out. But like to hear that from you, that's just kind of mind-boggling to me. And I don't mean to be judgmental. I'm just saying.
No, it was odd, and I never knew it was odd at the time. But then later on, it's only when I'm now, like I'm 46, and it's only been in the last, since I moved here and started, doing plays and working in live theater, and I'm working with a lot younger people. And some of my friends, these people are from Rhode Island, and in flies the family from Rhode Island to see this storefront play. These
right.
people are from Mississippi. Here come the family from Mississippi to see this storefront play.
Yeah, and your parents?
And my parents, who live 3 or 4 hours drive, I don't think they've ever seen me perform.
Well, your dad saw you once.
He did see me once at a small black box show back in.
But that was just basically right.
That was just like a one-off. But the show that I wrote and directed on the main stage, and undergrads never had a show on the main stage, and here's my main stage show.
I was in that show.
You were in that show.
So, and my mom came and saw that show. So,
so when this was happening and all these people were showing up, and I was like, really? The first time I thought, well, these people are just very close. That's just kind of weird. But then over time, I was like, well, I guess maybe everybody's family is like this.
Well, I mean,
maybe
I think
just not mine.
I think everybody's family is like their family.
Oh, sure,
and I think.
But in terms of being sad, I don't know if it was.
Were they outwardly sad? Your parents?
No, yeah.
Were they partying a lot though?
They were back in the late '70s and stuff, for sure.
Yeah, thank you, Brock. But did you ever see let's say it's a Tuesday afternoon, you've gotten home from school. Was your mom working at the time, or was your dad the kind of the breadwinner?
Dad was the guy.
Yeah. Okay. So did you ever come home and your mom was just really upset, or seemed down, or?
Sure.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of time. I don't know if she's going to see this or not, but my parents, they had some conflict in the '70s during that partying time. I guess that's going to happen, and my mom would be like, fuck this. And we'd go to one of her friends' house. And there I am as a child, and I spent a lot of time listening to, my mother and her friends. So listening to women complain about their relationships. And I don't know if that helped me or not.
So do you think then, looking back, of course, you can be like, of course, mom was upset because her and dad were fighting or whatever it may be. How do you think your mom projected her own sadness, upset, frustration? Was it just that way, like, fuck this, and we're going to go over to whoever's house, and we're all just going to talk about it?
Well, they would talk about it, and
you would sit
my
there.
Own device. And
what would you do? Would you wander around the house?
Read. I would have books to read and just kind of hang out and read my books, and they would sit over there and talk. I was, like I say, I was really on my own a lot. I was really to my own things.
But you never...
I don't know about sadness in that.
Okay. So, when did you start getting sad?
Well, let me tell you.
Yes.
Later in grade school, I guess once you start to really get into the social strata of things, and it was a small town, Harrisburg, Illinois, 11,000 people at that time. Now it's maybe around 10. But everybody knew each other from kindergarten up, but at the time, when you're little kids, it didn't matter. But then when you got to 5th, 6th, 7th grade, then things start to close, and you start to realize, if somebody drops you off, what kind of car it is, or if people start to talk about it, or that kind of a thing.
You start you just start to notice the material things,
right?
Yeah,
and we didn't have that.
Your family didn't have that,
right? We did, but then there's the '80s and non-unionism and Reaganism and those sorts of things, and that changed everything because Dad lost the only job he'd ever really had.
Your dad was in a union.
He was a union. He worked at a grocery store. He was started out as a bagger when he was like 16.
Those dudes who sit at the end and like bag groceries.
Bag groceries. But then, he worked there for 21 years. So at the end, he was, manager of the store, assistant manager of the store. And, we were trading our cars in every few years. We went to Disney World. We went to, go on a trip.
So you had the American dream.
Sure.
We're going to trade the car in a couple of years. We're going to do our 2 weeks vacation in the summer. Dad's going to work.
We're playing in the back of the station wagon.
Sure. You and Jeff?
Yeah.
Your brother Jeff?
Sure.
And then let's see, Ronald Reagan comes along.
Yeah. Not good.
Not good.
Not good.
Well, enough about politics. So you're upset later, and it has to do with I don't have what those other people have.
That, but also to see it's one thing to never have had something. It is ultimately worse to have had it and then not.
So how old were you? Sorry, how old were you when your dad lost his job?
8 or 9.
8 or 9. And then I know. I mean, I kind of know your story, and I know he became a carpenter, and
but that in between.
Yeah, how long was that in between phase?
It was a while, and he would come home, and we just didn't know what was going on. I mean, we lived near the little highway that came into town, and he would be out getting scrap lumber from construction jobs and making picnic tables and dog houses out of it and trying to sell it in the front of the house.
Wait a minute. So he'd build it,
and then set it out.
And then he'd set it out and put a little price tag on it
or something. And maybe people would pull off and be like, "Hey, I like that dog house," and they buy it. And
so was your dad? Did you? I have to ask. I mean, I can't imagine that. That's such a horrible thing. I provide for my family. I've been doing this for 21 years. Right. I've got this lovely wife. I got these 2 boys.
And his work.
He has other kids, and then all of a sudden that's taken away from him. So how did he react? At home, did he withdraw himself? Did he?
It was the same because he still had the band.
Sure.
And that became not such a hobby of let's have this good time and go play music at this place. And it was, I need to go play music out and make that $75 that I'm going to make. And
did he ever get? I have to ask. Did he ever get any? Was there ever any talk around town that whatever your dad's name is? He plays in a band.
No, it was always cool because it was his 21 years at the grocery, and it was it was the main market that people went to. So, and then he'd started out so young and been there for 20 years. So. 20 years is,
your parents met with him working there, right?
Sure did.
Is that right? Yeah. Okay. I have to say, I hope this is all right. I don't know how the ad went or any of the sad stuff, but I hope you're enjoying the conversation. What about your brother?
We're going to get sad.
Oh, well. What about your brother? Did your brother? I've met him a few times.
Right.
I like that guy. Was he ever upset?
I never knew it if he was.
He just kind of always exuded a fine. I'm okay.
Right, and it was weird because it's the small town, the small rural hometown thing, and then Jeff and Mom and Dad seemed like they were of a kind, and then I felt like myself on my own devices and all this other stuff that I was kind of different from them or separate from them. And I would kind of just observe. And because there was never really a lot of, home teaching, I guess manners, but just life, like mom and dad were doing their thing. And I would watch television like crazy. Like that, I had a television from as long as I can remember. It was
obsessed with TV,
little 15-inch black and white.
Obsessed,
right?
Every show that's ever been on.
Well, I don't know about that
since the '70s at least.
But yeah, I'd watched a lot of television, and like Family Affair, like some of these oldies, and I would watch how the people reacted or acted, so that when I went to a friend's house, I would know how to act, or I would know what to do. And I guess there was some sadness in that. There was some sadness in that.
Were you, when you would go to a friend's house and you would see but when you would see the families, would you be sad and say, why do I have to react the way I saw on TV just to feel like I fit in here? Why isn't this at home?
I don't know if I was thinking that at the time, but I mean, there was looking back, there was probably some sadness in that. Just kind of oh, it's really nice here. I'd like to stay here. And I gotta go to my house now. Okay. and whatever. But I would have to know how to act when I was there to not bring attention onto myself. And to not be that kid, to be that poor kid. That's why even still today, I don't want to ever be dirty. Like if I spill something on my shirt, I will, if I'm away from home, I might go buy a shirt.
No, I do know that, yeah. About you.
Yeah. Because I cannot stand to
Is there a shame in that?
Well, I think just because when we were growing up and we were just pretty poor, that you don't have to be dirty, like you can be, if you're poor, you can still be. That's
your one thing you can control, right?
Right.
We can't have the car.
We're poor, but I don't have to look like, I don't have to be this fucking dirty urchin running around with mustard on my pants. I mean, I'm not doing that.
Mustard on your pants?
Or whatever,
just leaning over.
Just like food, just eat the thing and it just squirts out on you, flops out on your face.
So let me fast forward a little bit. I want to ask you about actually, let me just say it this way. I've worked in corporate America. I get the corporate world. I think we all do in some way or another. And I've loved my jobs, but there are times at work where I get sad, where I get I feel I'm an imposter. Things like that. So I guess my question for you is, if you feel that way at work, have you ever felt that way at work?
I am sad every day, all day at my work.
Actually sad.
Pretty sad. There is a undercurrent of sadness at all times.
Why is that?
And I'll tell you why that is.
Okay.
Because of, I've had that background. I, for whatever reason, chose theater as a degree, even though that I probably had the intellect or abilities to do something else, something that made money. But my parents were never really into it. And so they were always just like, oh, whatever you want. Oh, do what makes you happy, kid. Kid, just do whatever makes you happy. Whatever you want to do, son. I'm proud of you. And so there was no, when I would go to IMSA, I went to the best school in Illinois, the Illinois Math and Science Academy. It was a boarding school.
Yeah.
And all those kids.
Aurora, right?
Right. And all those kids, their parents were like, you're being a doctor from 5 years old, like Tiger Woods' dad or Serena Williams' dad. You're like, you're doing this and you're doing this. But my parents were like, yeah, whatever you want, kid. Yeah, hell, do it.
And what did they say when you got
It just seems like there's always just hoops. And if you jump through the hoops, then you can get what you want. If you want to be an accountant or a lawyer or a doctor or whatever, and then you have the intellect or the abilities, then all you have to do is, if somebody just shows you where those hoops are and you can just jump through, I go get this degree and I spend these years and doing this and blah, blah, blah.
So when was the last time somebody showed you a hoop?
I've never had a hoop. I have been wandering the desert my whole life, and every once in a while I might run into one. Like when I when I joined the Air Force and stuff, I mean, that was the other thing, because I didn't graduate from IMSA. I got in trouble, and I chose to leave during my senior year and went back to my
you graduated from hometown
Harrisburg High School, sure.
And then you went to school. College, U of I, go Illini.
And again, I was a poor kid. I had gotten in a car accident when I was younger, so there was a trust fund set up. And then when I was 18, I was able to get into it.
Yeah.
And as a person who's never had any money, suddenly here's a big pile of it. I didn't do the right thing. I was just
So
like...
there's no more
I
of that
blew
money
through
now.
it. Yeah, I blew through it. And within like a year and a half at U of I was
And
out.
it was when you were in
and maybe that's the sadness too, is like trying to replace or trying to ease the sadness, like the sadness of the not, the have-nots. I was always a have-not. I still feel like that. Okay. If I won the lottery tomorrow, I'd be poor. I'd feel poor inside. I think wherever you start your life, you feel that way forever.
If you won the lottery, would you give me some money?
I would give you a lot of money. And I would have a lot of money, and I would do all the things. But I would still feel poor. Like a poor person. I would think about money in the way that a poor person feels about money.
So as you feel that way and think that way, what do you put on every day to make yourself... So you're saying to yourself, I don't want to look that way. I don't want to have the mustard on my pants. I don't want to be the poor person. Do you still feel you put on some sort of facade?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think a lot of us do. But I think some of us, like, we're theater grads and, like we're actors. And so I think we have a way of being able to present ourselves in such a way. But I mask myself in such a way. I mean, look, I got a big fucking white beard, and I tend to dress a certain way, or when I'm out, like flashy, like embroidered, like Western shirts, and just hats. Just try to, so you're not looking at me.
You're looking
like
at
you're looking
at
the costume that I put on, the character that I'm trying to portray at the moment.
Do you ever, when you're out, because I've been out with you literally hundreds of times. Have you ever, I know what you're like sober, I know what you're like drunk. Have you ever been, even when drunk, sat there and thought, I don't belong here, I'm upset, shouldn't be here, anything like that?
Sure.
I feel that way a lot. Sometimes when I'm drunk, I feel I want to be quiet.
The older I get, the more that is. And the more that I have let myself kind of... I say about my work, and I talk about my work because I came here as a theater graduate to pursue live theater and maybe more. And now I'm a tax processor in an accounting firm. I didn't move to Chicago to do that. I didn't come here to just do some grunt office work. I want more than that.
Why do you think you're...
And I can't get more than that. I don't know what to do. It was 12 years. It was maybe a year ago where I discovered for the first time that people join theater companies not because the theater company asked them, but because they asked those people. I didn't know that.
Did you say that's like a hoop?
I always sat around being sad because, nobody wants me to be in their theater company. But I didn't ask any theater companies, hey, can I be with you guys? Because I didn't know that's what you're supposed to do.
Yeah, so
it was a hoop that I didn't know where it was.
Yeah, so would you sit at home and think to yourself, wow, damn it, I wish I feel real bad about it. But then you'd be with those people and you'd try to be something totally different. You try to be really engaging. Would you think to yourself, maybe if I'm even more engaging, they'll ask me to be in their company?
Be on, like turn it on, like to be on.
Yeah.
I think a lot of actors, they find themselves in social places and they're on, which is their on is different from
who they are.
Their regular, just at home self.
What's your at home self?
Well, it's more like this, I guess.
That's true.
Right. Yeah. When we're just hanging out.
Yeah.
But you've seen me out and about and on, like when we were at Ryan's mom's house with Just Us was playing there.
Yeah.
That was a night I felt like I was just on the whole night.
Yeah.
Just like really presenting and performing and charming, whatever. But there's a core sadness in that is trying to be patched over, to be filled. It's a hole within that we're trying to fill.
I agree with that. And do you think, have you ever behaved towards other people, whether it be at work, loved ones, whatever it is, when you're sad or when you're anxious or upset, where you lash out?
Well, certainly.
Okay. So the reason I ask that is because for a lot of my life, and still sometimes now, especially if I'm anxious or overwhelmed or really upset about something, I get real defensive and I can't think things through clearly. And so I kind of lash out at other people, and it's not who I am. but I'm a pretty intense person, and it comes out as something very realistic, I think. So I guess the reason I'm asking is I don't want to be alone, right? That's the whole reason I'm doing this show. I guess I don't want anybody to feel alone when they have this. So when you're sad or you're upset, do you tell me about a time? You don't have to tell me who it was, or like where you just turned it into anger.
Sometimes it's when the other person is maybe trying to maybe relate, or maybe trying to, or no, when they're just lamenting. Let's say that a person is lamenting to me, and I, in my sadness, I see this person as, man, this person has it going on, or they don't have anything to worry about, or why the fuck are you saying this? You want to hear some sad shit? Well, here it comes, pal. Fuck it, it's coming. And fuck you for trying to present yourself as some sad sack. Here's the sad sack shit. And then...
So it's like you want to top it.
Yeah, I guess I'm going to one-up them on the sad.
Top it, but at the same time, you're trying to be like, I'm going to top you, but I'm also going to be like, let me show you some perspective. You're right. Upset about that, but this is really what you should be upset about.
And that's the truth, too. And that's a good point. And I think that maybe you have some of this, too. And what we've talked about is you are sad yourself, so that maybe that you think that you can not heal or fix, but to try to be that person to swoop in. Now, I'll tell you another story. When I was at IMSA, and I left IMSA to go to an inpatient treatment center. Okay. And after that, they wanted me to go to a halfway house. And I think now that was probably some insurance things and whatnot. I don't know that really had to happen. But it did happen. And I spent 3 months in Louisville, Kentucky at a halfway house. Uh-huh. And it was people my age. It was teenagers. And there was a point where one night, like a lot of the guys and girls kind of got together, and there was like sex stuff happening. And it was a big, horrible mess of a thing. I had no idea about it because nobody wanted to get into that with me.
Wait,
or I just wasn't part of that thing. No, they were like out in the grounds. Like there was a plan. Like everybody, like, hey, at 11 o'clock at this night, let's go sneak out. But I wasn't part of this plan. So it all came down. It all got found out. They all got caught, and it was a clamp down. Like you couldn't do anything. You couldn't be next to a opposite sex person. You couldn't sit next to them. That did not apply to me. So the girls there would still just like lay on me, and we would talk, and I would just be the champion. Like every time that somebody was upset, I would be the guy to come and counsel them or talk to them or comfort them.
Have you felt you moved out of that?
I do, I think. I don't find myself doing that as much as I used to.
Being the friend, or
just being the hero. Yeah. Just always trying to be the hero.
Did you find self-worth in that?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like, oh, well, I suck this much, but if I can help this person, maybe I don't suck quite as much.
Sorry, I have to, a quick tangent. Do you remember what you and I used to say to each other in college?
We are...
We are the shit, and we are shit.
Yeah, we are and are the shit.
Yes.
Yeah, we would think that. Yeah, that's true.
And it's
it's
a weird thing because
it's kind of a sine curve. Like I'm the shit. I am shit.
You take your own self-loathing and try to take it and say, "Well, I'm going to take this and save this other person. And that will make me feel better." But I think what you're doing, at least in my experience, is what you don't know you're doing is you're just putting your own shit on that person. And you're wanting them to be like, praise me. And they're like, I got enough shit, man. Thanks for helping me out.
Speaking on the help out biz, and maybe you can tell me if this has ever happened to you. Before, in my past, not so much now, but before I was kind of just in my head a lot with the sadness.
Yeah.
When I could just have the sadness behind and just present, and I was trying to just be more cheerful most of the time, and just being
and the sadness just kind of receded.
I'm just that dude. I'm just chilling.
Yeah.
So many times people would be like, I'd be spending time with them and really trying to listen to them and really trying to relate to them, and they would catch in on this, and then they'd say, "Oh, you remind me of somebody that they loved in their life. Oh, you remind me of my cousin Jim."
Or Giovanna Ribisi.
Oh, you remind me of... Yeah, for you. But, oh, you're like my Uncle Joe. you're just like this person, like somebody that they liked a lot.
Yeah.
And I reminded him of that.
Yeah.
And it makes me sad now that never happens anymore. Because I don't feel like I'm ever out of my own head enough to let that happen.
So you're saying
I'm much more in my head now than I was.
You're much more in your head, and then you don't feel you can break out of that and be whether it's the savior or the hero, or any of that. What did you say about when you're growing up? You're just rolling and you.
I call it a Katamari ball, like these things that just pick up whatever they roll past, and then just have the eyes wide open.
Do you think too much has come upon you? And it's now caught up with you. And you're just like, I can't, my head is too fucked up about it.
I think it is. I think that in the moment, like in the teenage years and the early 20s, when it was just eyes wide open, just two-handed eating it. But it was always just now, the moment.
Yeah.
And not really considering the future or not really planning for anything. Just as it is happening, react, go for it. And usually, whatever abilities or whatever can make it okay.
Yeah.
But at a certain point, it fails. You're going to live your whole life that way. You gotta have,
I don't know how to.
I gotta have something that I begin and then finish that leads to something else that you begin and then finish, and that leads to something else that you begin and then finish. When
you were doing that, when you were just eating it two-handed, as you say, were you thinking about it, like saying, I can't do this too long? There's going to be a stop point. No. There's going to be a stopgap. You're just like
eating
Henry
it.
Miller.
I ate it.
Fucking eating it hard.
I ate it. I was delivering pizzas and champagne in a car that the window was all smashed out and the door wouldn't close. You had to hold it closed if you were turning right. And in the wintertime, the snow would just blow in, and I would just like swipe it out and just keep delivering pizzas in it.
So wait a minute. And not to push too hard. I mean, like this isn't like nostalgia looking back. This is because I look back on a lot of times in my life and I'm like, that's when I had it, right? That's when it was good. That's bullshit, right?
Right.
And I'm not saying this is bullshit, but are you looking back in rose-colored glasses?
Oh, absolutely. No. What was going on then when all that shit was going on? In the moment, I can remember it being... Oh, no. In the moment, it was great.
You were loving it.
But... in hindsight, I was doing nothing. What was that? What was that guy? I was living in a guy's closet. A guy had festooned a piece of a camera onto a closet door as a handle and put like a twin-size mattress in it, and that's where I lived.
And what book did you read when you were in that closet?
Les Miserables. The whole thing.
That whole unabridged.
The whole unabridged thing.
Fucking thick, man. The candles. You and I have talked about the candle. You forgot the candle. Anyway. Okay.
But at the time, I was like, "Oh, this is exciting. I'm loving it." But now I'm like,
"But isn't that kind of like what life's supposed to like? Do we just continuously until we're dead look back at other times and be like, at that time I got it, but at the same time I look back now and I was fucked up. Are we going to get totally caught up in that?"
Well, here's my Rich Dad Poor Dad. I'm the poor dad. I don't have any ideas about money, right? And so people's always like, "Oh, retirement, 401k. You got to push all the money."
Mm-hmm.
And part of me is like, "Well, yeah, I dig that, but if I don't have any money now, so that I can be okay later, that sucks. Well, I'm going to have some money and then be 80 years old and not be able to get around. Why don't I spend some of that money now and go on a cruise or something and enjoy myself when I'm like in my 30s and can really, really dig it?" So there's always this thing. I don't know what I'm doing, but part of me is like, well, maybe I should just, what's the point?
Yeah,
what's the point of working like I do and the job that I hate if I can't have some fun and enjoy myself?
But don't you get fucked up about the job that you have and you feel like you're wasting your time?
Absolutely right.
So if you're wasting your time in the job that you have, but you're saying, I'm not going to spend any money because this is the time I'm going to do this, isn't there a bit of are those two things butting against each other? I'm not making any sense. Okay. So like, you're like, obviously,
like right now, I'm making more than I've ever had.
Right.
Which still isn't,
but you're making good enough money.
But it's okay. Yeah.
And so you're doing that, but you're also like, okay, I'm going to spend my money.
I just started a 401k after 12 years of work.
High five.
Yeah.
Yeah, I got a 401k.
Yeah,
I don't know what it means, but I'm happy about it.
Right. I just started like a few months ago.
About percentages.
And I should have been doing it the whole time.
What? And is this go back to that daily business of life thing?
Yeah, and it goes back to that, and it goes back to, well, I'm not going, it's like you put a bucket of food in front of a dog and they'll eat till they founder because they don't know when the next food is going to be there. And that's
but even after you've done it over and over again, does this go back to the poor kid? And
Aristotle, give me a boy until he's 7, I'll give you the man.
Yeah.
And so when your childhood, and I've only started to really kind of think about my childhood and consider it and how it has affected who I am now.
Can Aristotle, do you think he could go to 8?
Maybe.
Okay, because 8 was a big year for me.
That's pretty.
It was a big year. Sad year. Pretty sad year. Very sad.
Yeah, it can be. Third grade can be
actually,
sad.
B and friends. The weekend after my parents split up, I went with B and his dad in their big blue van, and we went to see Problem Child in the theater. And I remember coming back from the theater and laying in the back of the van because it was like the seats were taken out or something, and laying in the back of the van and just feeling like I was in some sort of terrible nightmare and like it wasn't real, and my whole body, it hurt is the wrong word. It just felt really exhausted, and I just kept telling myself, it's not real, it's not real. And I remember thinking to myself that Mr. Leach and Brock, I was like, I'm so happy they're here with me because I was so unbelievably sad. And I don't blame anybody about that. It was just there's a seminal moment in my life when I was like, this can't be real, but it was real. And that's like one of the first times I ever had real sadness. Because before that, I'd get a little sad about other shit. Like, that was like real emptiness.
Imagine.
Gone.
And so many of my friends went through divorces with their parents, and my parents are divorced, but it happened when I was an infant. So never, my biological father and his new family lived a block away, but still, that didn't really factor
and you didn't.
It wasn't my nuclear family that was split up. So you'd have well more to say about that than me. Were you close with your? You haven't mentioned your biological dad. I didn't have much of a relationship, and it's kind of odd because looking at pictures,
you're him.
I look like him, and by all accounts, I'm him. And my mom's mom passed a couple summers ago, and we went to that funeral, and that's where my whole family is from, in the southeastern Kentucky, the Appalachia regions, hollers and whatnot. And I went to that funeral, and so many people came up to me and was just kind of looking at me weird. And I was like, what's going on? And then they were talking about how much I look like my dad. But I didn't have much of a relationship.
Even as
he was a third shift coal miner. He was a coal miner and then worked third shift. And so he slept most of the days. And his new wife wasn't really a big fan.
Wasn't a big fan of you.
Right.
What?
And so there wasn't a lot going on there. And
can I ask you this? Do you ever talk to your brother about this?
Doc?
Yeah, Doc. About
our dad?
Not even your dad. About growing up with your parents and them not being there. And
no,
that's not the type of relationship you guys have.
Not really. I never really confronted it until the last couple of years myself.
Okay.
And I will say, over this last Christmas, me and my mother had a little bit of a come-to meeting, and not meeting, but like we started talking and kind of getting into it, and I just kind of cut loose with it. Just kind of saying, hey, she's like, why don't you, kind of giving me the guilt. Why don't you? Because you left me alone all the time. Because you and Dad were out searching for your own happiness. Well, don't you and your wife want happiness? Well, yeah, but we don't have children either. So there was some of that, and I was kind of letting her have it. And
did you feel guilty about doing that?
Afterward, yeah. But then I didn't say anything that wasn't absolutely the truth. But I always feel that obligation, right? Like that's a sad that Albert Brooks movie, Mother. I mean, that's all these things. I'm always kind of going back to TV and movie, but that's kind of why I raised myself on. But at the same time, human nature is the same, and we see ourselves in TV and movies because we all have similar experience. But that
Stories.
Mom thing, yeah. So, oh, Mom, I hate you for this. Oh, but you're my mom and I love you. I want your approval. Fuck your approval. You ain't gonna guilt me. I don't care if this constant kind of push-pull.
It's complicated.
Very.
As I've gotten older, I mean, I'm not that old, but as I've gotten older, I've thought about, I say very definitive statements about parenting. I would do this, or I would do that, or this was wrong, or that was wrong. And that's all bullshit, right? And my parents, I think, two very different people. Very different. So happy about Elgin. So happy they met. But they're two very different people, and I honestly to God, believe they did their best. And I love them. They've both been so supportive and great to me. But they had their troubles, and that causes other troubles. And anybody who has children...
Let's talk about that part of it, though.
What part of it?
They did their best. My mom says that all the time.
My parents...
I did my best.
Yeah.
Really? If that was your best?
Yeah.
God damn, I'd hate to see your worst. That was your best. I mean, I'm kind of free and open, but you and your father, you had kind of a rough...
Dad and I didn't talk.
Here a little bit there.
Dad
and your dad's didn't come to see things, didn't really have much to do with.
Well, no. That's been later. Dad and I didn't talk much my first 8 years. I got in trouble for crying at school. I cried because the kid didn't have markers. This is the special liberal snowflake edition for the. No, Dad and I didn't talk. We talked about baseball a little bit, and that was it. And I specifically remember coming home the day that he left, and I was walking up to wash my hands after riding bikes with a friend of mine, and he just said to me, he never talked to me, he just said to me, hey, don't you want to say hi to your dad? I remember thinking, what the fuck? Well, maybe not those words, but I remember thinking, what? You never say anything to me. And I just kind of dutifully walked over to him, and he gave me a hug. This is weird, and I gave him a hug, like around him, and I remember thinking to myself, this feels like crying. I just wanted to not do it anymore, right? So then I left again and rode my bike, and I came back home, and all the lights were out. It's very dramatic. All the lights were out, and my sister and my mom were in one corner, and they were very upset, and my dad was just sitting in the same chair, and he was just staring straight ahead. And that's the night we, kind of was going to leave, and I don't know. I tell it now, it sounds, to me, I want it to sound pedestrian, but it's very visceral.
Right, and in these moments that it's really fucked up. I mean, can you really look and say, oh, he was doing his best? No, he wasn't. What? He was doing his best. He would be, comforting you and holding you and be like, oh, my son, I love you. And
but here's the thing about best and worst, right? If Jesus, I'm just a few years younger than him now. Sorry. I'm a few years younger than he was when they split up. Do I know if I would know what to do with an 8-year-old kid?
Right. And how about that? I think about that all the time. If me and Samantha had children, I'm almost married 25 years and we never had kids. We purposely, we decided that we weren't going to have kids and we never did.
Yeah. And
now here I am, just ate up. And would I be as ate up if I had had children? If I had thing that I would have had
you would have put it on to the kids,
put some focus on, or tried to, I have this amazing responsibility now.
Yeah.
And I have to put my focus on that instead of letting my own needs, wants, concerns just churn.
But isn't that the whole
mind.
thing? Isn't that the whole thing, though? Because, yeah, you're ate up now and it comes out in different ways. But isn't that going to, if I think about if I have a kid, I would just cry all the time. And that's the God's honest truth, because I'd be like, oh my God, I don't know what to do. I love you so much. I'm overwhelmed by it. But at the same time, if I'm so fucking ate up as just a person, and then I see my kid do one thing wrong, and I want to correct it, I want to help them, I'm just going to put all that shit on them.
Yeah, I feel like I would be scared of just complete overcompensating, like being just tiger dad, or like, rawr, like here's a fucking hoop, you better jump through it. Like for me, like where are the hoops? I don't know where the hoops are that I didn't need to jump through. Maybe, I didn't know that there even are hoops. I just walked into this round thing one day, and I walked through, and then I got into this good school.
So you would do your best, right?
Yeah.
And I think that's.
But if I had a kid, I'd be like, "There's that fucking hoop. You better jump through that."
Yeah, but that would be the hoop that you know.
Right.
That may not be the hoop that I know, that anybody else knows.
Right.
Right, because of where you came from. And what I'm saying is, like, you would do your best, just as my parents did their best, and my parents continue to do their best. My mom sent a text to my sister and I today, just a bullshit text about how well we were doing. Then she cursed, and it was hilarious. I couldn't stop laughing.
And your mom has Bitmoji.
My mom is the best. Listen to me. The best fucking Bitmoji on the planet.
Linda's Bitmoji.
Dude, the best. I've showed it to you many times.
I dig Linda's Bitmoji.
I love
it's pretty heat.
her Bitmoji. But yeah, it's the best. My mom has a really great sense of humor. And my dad has a different sense of humor that is not self-aware.
I guess I just was wondering, we're sitting here talking, we've talked quite a bit now. And a lot, I think, and I was thinking about this when I was on my way here, sad versus regret versus consternation versus, whatever negative emotions. What is sad? And most of the times when I feel like, what's really sad? I mean, I think depressed, like clinically depressed, is not the same thing.
No, it's different.
As sad.
Clinically depressed is a physical and mental. I've never been personally clinically depressed. Do you think you have?
I think so.
Yeah.
I think I live in it, and I self-medicate with weed and booze.
Yeah.
And I deal with it in that way. That's different from sad.
Yeah. Yeah. And I see some other people that are saying some stuff. It looks like oh man. So some people are kind of responding to, like, we were talking about the best. You were talking about how you wanted to say to your mom, "That's your best, really?"
Right.
I'd hate to see your worst, and somebody here, K-Slade19 said, would hate to see them at their worst. Well, on my father's side, anyway.
Right.
Well, he sounds like a slim man.
I'll tell you what, it's sad.
Yeah.
Like, depressed is one thing, but then sad, like, but maybe that's not even it either. I guess I'm just concentrating on things that people say, maybe things that happen to you that have never left. Like, I will tell you right now. There's a fella that I went to school with, and we lived in a dormitory. Like, it was at IMSA my first year there, and they didn't have any dormitories built, and they had a physics lab that had cots in it. It was like a barracks, and that's what we lived in. And this kid had a cot next to me, and he had been to a math camp with some girls from Harrisburg.
Oh, he was cool.
And then I guess they told him that I was going to be at school and stuff. So he was like, "Oh, you're so and so. Oh, well, then you know these people." And then we got to talking and stuff, and then we're laughing. And then he says, and I am 15 years old at this time, and I am 46 now. And he said, "Oh, you're just like they said. Really big, really funny. and really ugly. And that like just the you're just like it, like his just outwardly, just openly saying this. I till the day I die, I will be really ugly, like physically ugly, like to look at. There's nothing that can ever be said or happen to me that will make me feel any other way than that I am
just because of that
really ugly.
That moment.
Because that moment.
Yeah.
And that guy is just like so open. He's like, oh, you're just like they said. And like that was just so natural. Of course that you're so ugly.
And it makes me sad because I think we all, at one time or another, have done that to somebody else and not realized it.
Right. And maybe they're walking around.
And they're just thinking about, I got shit I think about the people said to me. I mean, that's a pretty strong story. But, yeah. So some people here, man, K Slade 19 is really, really killing it over here. She said, I think it's a she. I think there are different levels of sad, but everyone's been sad. I think that's fair. And I think that's part of what we're trying to get at. You're all right. I think it's part of what we're trying to get at, which is like, yeah, we all get sad. And I guess we've been trying to relate. Oh, we've been sad about this. Maybe how did we act? Nobody talks about it. And I find that really weird. Why doesn't everybody fucking talk about it?
Everybody wants to put on the brave face.
Yeah.
Especially with where we're at with these things. I mean, this instant connection, constant connection.
Yeah.
The Facebook, the Instagram, the people that are going out and trying to get plastic surgery to make themselves look like their Snapchat filter makes them look.
Is that a thing?
People are doing this. People are going out and showing like, hey, see the Snapchat filter? I want you to make me really look like this. And it's ate up. I mean, Sam's kids are third graders. They're 8 and 9 years old, and their Facebook is...
They're on Facebook?
Oh, man, like crazy. And Bella, she's teenage girls these days in the world of Snapchat and Instagram and all that, and the pressure that must be. Got to be 10 times worse than it ever was for us.
I mean, and kind of connecting that to what we were just talking about. I barely ever go on Facebook, but I went on the other day, and somebody I saw on there is somebody who did something to me 2.5 years ago that really upset me. And I saw him on there, and then I was just like, I felt it all. So if you're going to be an 8th grade kid, or however old your niece is, sorry.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh, this person looks like this, or they say this about my Snapchat picture or whatever.
Right.
How's that stuff going to just build and build and build?
Right. It's the difference between when we were, or when I was a kid, especially, you maybe heard it third hand, somebody said it in the hallway. But here you can see a picture of yourself and then just read it. And just read all the comments and just read the people saying horrible things. Talk about a sad generator. That's like a sad Chernobyl.
And then, but everybody uses all this to show, look how happy I am, and I'm projecting this, and
it makes other people sad. It makes
everybody sad. That's why I don't go on that shit.
Great world, and then you're like, my world.
What have I done? I've done nothing.
I don't have, dude.
Yeah. Well, we're coming up on an hour. K Slade 19 seems to really be saying a lot. She says definitely social media is definitely the problem. Put in parentheses people because she's pretty smooth. But I think we're probably should wrap up. We've been going for about an hour, and
I mean, not on account of anyone here. So yeah, at your convenience, Sir Kevin.
Okay. Well, I think we should probably wrap.
Well,
I've got a few questions for you guys.
Oh, okay.
Sure.
Yeah, please.
Based off of some of the chat and stuff. Question for you is like, so knowing kind of like the heaviness of the conversation, but excluding your relationship with Kevin, which makes this actually a difficult question. why did you agree to come here and talk about this today?
Oh, well, that is a good question.
Right, because you have to
outside of
completely
him.
exclude him.
Right, because we talk about these things so much, each other. But that's the other thing. And I think that maybe I've always been trying to do that by always trying to alleviate, always trying to let the air out of that balloon, like always trying to make myself really have to consider and think things through by saying it out loud.
Yeah.
And by working it through. And also, I generally feel like even the small thing, like if something goes wrong with my computer, I feel like if it's happening to me, it's happened to someone else. I can just type in exactly what happened wrong and then find all the answers to fix my computer. It's kind of like that with myself, right? And I've found that to be the case, that people will tell me a lot of things because I will tell them a lot of things. And I will share a lot more than I think that other people are probably comfortable sharing. But once I do, they will share with me. And we both end up feeling better afterward.
Yeah.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And the metaphor you use or the analogy, I don't know the words well, but about how if I put it in, I know somebody else has had this problem with my computer. That's exactly what I think that we should all be doing, is saying, I have this problem.
Right.
So somebody else could go, I have this problem too.
Right.
Oh, I don't feel so alone. And, I can now relate to you. And, I can feel a little more normal. And then I can tell you about my problem, how it's a little different than yours. Then we can both feel we've let something out.
Absolutely right.
So,
Yeah.
And then to put a little bit of helium in the balloon, what would you say if I asked you to try to share with us, or even identify/share? Maybe this is something you've thought about, maybe this you've not even processed. But is there any humor or comedy within your sad?
Well, that's always the tragedy plus time equals comedy. That's like the thing. That's what people say. So, yeah, I mean, when I would tell him the story of being in Urbana, Illinois, and laying on a bare mattress surrounded by janky porn mags with, with like no curtains and a mountain of beer cans in the fridge. And I left that apartment out the window owing her money and just skedaddled.
But that's how everybody leaves apartments.
That was a piss poor part of my life and was very sad at the time.
But I can see it in my brain when you told it to me.
But when we talked about it, we just laughed.
I was laughing so hard. And to piggyback a little bit on what you were saying, I don't know. I talk to my sister every day. And I make these dark fucking jokes to her. And she's a good sport about it. But I make those jokes because that's how I know how to deal with it. I joke about shit like, for example, in 2004, I got genital warts, and the next year I was in a production of Johnny Appleseed Outdoor Drama, and there's one scene I had to play a Native American, and I was like, I should name myself, and I named myself Dances with Warts, because that's how you have to joke about it,
right?
And that's a crude thing to say about it, but humor is the best way to get through all of it. And when
it's the shape of New York.
Even when it's the
shape of Upper East Side warts.
That's right. All my warts on my penis.
Some Long Island warts.
Yeah, some Lower East Side, Upper West Side. Hey, Mom. But I've learned older. I used to be real uptight about it. I'd make jokes about other people, then people would make jokes about me, and I'd be like, but you gotta be like, yeah, I'm a balding, annoying person. You know what I mean? And humor, so sorry, to take it back, humor and sadness are the same thing. It's just a way to sweeten it.
Yeah. To me, that's like what's so awesome about this show and what you're going to do week to week. Definitely a lot of people have stopped in, said hello. throughout the time, and we just kind of hope to expand this dialogue.
Yeah.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your next show?
Yeah. Well, I want to have Marcum on again. Marcum. Because I think Marcum and I could talk like this for hours, especially if we had a few more beers.
Well, it started out this. I don't know. This. I think probably as time goes on, you might find more of the humor. I mean, we found some of the humor, but I think there was some heaviness. But I think by churning through the heavy is where you can kind of come out, and kind of start doing some more surfing. But we had to get through that heavy stuff first. But,
and that's true.
And I hope, again, like I say, because I'm an open book, and I'll tell you about my life. I don't care. And because I think that if I have felt this way, maybe some of these people have felt that
way. And I hope
and it's not all about the yucks all the time.
No, I hope that one or two or however many people watch it. I mean, so what we're going to do, right? I'm going to try to have people on and talk with them and let them tell the story, hopefully somewhat half as well as Marcum did. And
even the exploration, right? Yeah. It's like just the exploration.
And let people, if they're watching at home, listen and hopefully, I honestly, God, no bullshit, hope that they hear some of this and they're like, oh, yeah, and they feel less alone and they realize, okay.
You've been listening to A Fourth Hand Joint.